So after 1 year of waiting, we are finally gonna get blood and guts. And if you've only started watching AEW recently, I don't mean they're literally gonna show you some blood and some guts. That would be really weird, but we are gonna get a very violent match between the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle. And I, for one, am very excited. I like it when people beat other people up. But my name is also Simon Miller, and welcome to another episode of Ups and Downs, where we do give the good bits an up and we give the bad bits a down when it comes to professional wrestling. And if you're keeping track of this week, when we get to the end of WrestleMania season, I will have watched 23 hours of wrestling in 7 days, but I'll still be smiling because nothing can take me down. I mean, I have a ridiculous job anyway. Let's up those downs. Dynamite started with the Inner Circle turning up at the arena, and they're all driving these super duper expensive cars, and because I'm a massive buffoon, I laughed. And the reason I chuckled away is that Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara were just wearing jackets. They didn't have a top on, which meant they were basically driving around in these super duper sports cars, half naked, and that's just how my brain works. Somebody needs to fire me out of a cannon. Move right into our first match, which was Hangman Adam Page taking on Max Caster, and I'm not hearing any more shib about this man. I know he raps, and I know it's a little bit like John Cena, but he has made it his own. I mean, within this verse, he managed to compare the cowboy to both Joe Biden and Lil Nas X, and I don't really get how he did it. Page reacted like a normal human being who had just been insulted on a microphone because he attacked both Anthony Bowens and Max Caster before the bell. And even though Caster had a little something in the early going, eventually the cowboy just booted him right in the face. And it looked so vicious, I said to myself, maybe wrestling not predetermined no more. Sadly, Page was born as a wrestler though, so when the two were brawling on the outside and Bowen started to go, hey, over here, he was distracted. And by the time he got back in the ring, Max was ready and started to whoop his ass. They were then back on the mats after Hangman had hit a plancha onto Max Caster. And this is when Anthony Bowen just went, oh, I don't care anymore. And with the referee's back turned, he started to attack Adam. That was basically the story of this match. Hangman wasn't able to get any momentum because he was essentially fighting two dudes. So yes, wrestlers really do need to learn the power to ignore, but there was a really close near fall after Anthony Bowens had thrown a chain to Max Caster and he had punched Adam right in the face. But this is Hangman Adam Page, the man who is going to go on a huge redemption arc and save All Elite Wrestling. So finally he hit the buckshot lariat while also taking out Bowens, and he got the 1-2 tree. But this was all fine. I mean, I will admit it wasn't as good as I was expecting, but it was still a nice way to open AEW Dynamite. And also, like I say, you can just tell that Hangman Adam Page eventually is going to be so important to bringing the World Championship back to the good side, and I cannot wait for that. Tony Schiavone then brought out Death Triangle for an interview, and there was excitement in the air straight away because it was confirmed that next week on Dynamite we are going to get Pac and Phoenix taking on the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team titles. And I'm so confident that is a good match, I would bet my life on it. Now, back in realistic terms, of course I wouldn't do that. Why would you bet your life on anything? But I just felt like we needed some hyperbole. Before they got to say anything though, of all the people, the best friends interrupted, and they were all like, yeah, we know you got a tag team title shot, but we just want to let you know that the boys are back in town, and now we're here with an alien, because of course Chris Statlander has joined their group. I thought this was kind of odd. I'm going to presume that AEW did this because eventually we'll have a Death Triangle versus Best Friends feud. I mean, that makes sense. There's three of them, and there's three of them. But it also kind of sent a message to me, look, Pac and Phoenix, they ain't going to win the tag team titles, so we're just getting this in place now. I could be completely wrong, of course, but I don't want that in my brain, and I'm already thinking that Young Bucks aren't going to lose the titles, given what happened at the end of the show. So yeah, doing it right here, right now, I thought it was a little bit strange. The Inner Circle were then out to address the Pinnacle. I tell you, they are not happy. Chris Jericho did most of the talking though, and even apologized to the fans for their recent actions, and there's no two ways about it. This was one of the best Chris Jericho promos we have seen in ages, but if you were to come to me and say, Simon, isn't it a bit weird that Jericho is now like a really good guy, even though a few weeks ago he was beating up the Young Bucks' dad? And I would say to you, you are correct. Sometimes, unfortunately, that happens in wrestling. People literally turn on a dime. Not literally. Anywho, he had a great story about why he did recruit MJF into the Inner Circle, and that's because he wanted to keep his thumb on his head and not allow him to rise to the top, because Chris Jericho is a very experienced professional wrestler and he knows what he's doing. Unfortunately though, on this occasion, he was outsmarted, and that's why now he's really mad. Even with all of that though, revenge is coming because Maxwell wants to be the best now, but that's not how this thing works. And then Jericho just systematically started to take apart everybody in the Pinnacle. And honestly, these were some pretty good barbs, some pretty good jives, and you did start to go, oh yeah, when Chris Jericho wants to be a super mega babyface, you really do get behind him. And now he's got a beard. It all finished when he challenged them to a blood and guts match, and that did surprise me a little bit because, man, that escalated quickly. I thought we'd do some singles feuds and some tag feuds and that would be the end of the journey. But hey, if you want to do it at the start of the journey, that's even better for me. Who the hell knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Maybe I'll die, and I don't want to die. I want to see the blood and guts match. The point being, this was a great promo by Chris Jericho and once again proved why he's one of the best to ever do it. Taz then offered Christian Cage a spot in Team Taz. So he just went up to him and said, hey Christian, you'll love the color orange. You should come and join my group. And even though Christian looked like he was gonna go, sorry dude, I'm more into the color red, Taz was like, look, give it a week, think about it, and we can talk in 7 days. So I'm gonna guess this finishes with Christian taking on one of Taz's goons. And this was another one of these segments on AEW Dynamite where I was like, well, it's okay, but I'm not 100% sure it's exactly what I wanted to see. However, as always, we need to see it play out. Things then went nuts, because we were going to have the Jurassic Express taking on Bear Country, but because AEW has a deal with Godzilla vs. Kong, they aired this video package where they tied the match into that movie, and I suppose Luchasaurus is a dinosaur, which is kind of essentially what Godzilla is. Not gonna lie, I got a kick out of it. And I really did get a kick out of the match. And yes, it wasn't the smoothest thing you've ever seen in your life, and there were a few mistakes here and there, but who cares when you had Jungle Boy doing every single dive he could possibly do, getting caught by Bear Country, and then Luchasaurus going, well, I can help you, and he planted himself out of the ring too. Boulder Bear, or whatever the hell we're calling him, then still tried to destroy Jungle Boy, but Luchasaurus once again was trying to help him. But it finished with him giving Jungle Boy a powerbomb that had so much force, I think I saw his soul leave his body. Just flew up out of there. He was then killed for a while until Luchasaurus did get the hot tag, and this was an awesome visual because the dinosaur is pretty good, but if I dare say it, I actually think Bear Country may be even bigger. So even though he did get some shots in, including a German suplex, he was then flattened by a superplex. And honestly, we have something with these bears. You can just turn them into absolute monsters, and who the hell wouldn't buy it? Jungle Boy broke up that near fall with a DDT onto Bronson, but then when Luchasaurus was trying to make another pin onto Boulder, Bronson picked up Jungle Boy and basically gave him a driver onto everybody else to break up the pin. I mean, that is like throwing yourself out of a window when you could just use the door, but I really liked it. Thankfully, the prehistoric monster and his Tarzan-like friend had more experience here, and it did end when Luchasaurus hit a moonsault for the 1, 2, 3, and like I say, I just thought it was entertaining. It was 3 really big dudes and 1 really agile dude just running for around about 8 to 10 minutes. How can you not like that? We also learned more about QT Marshall's group after this, and I do not understand this mentality of people going, oh, AEW has too many groups, they have too many stables. I mean, one, we didn't have any groups for like 20 years because WWE never doubled down on them, and also, it's realistic, it makes sense. If you were going into a war zone like professional wrestling, wouldn't you want a bunch of buddies around you? Of course you would. Also, it basically explains 90% of all sports. All of this has been brought about though because of QT Marshall's opinion of Cody Rhodes and how Cody has always looked down on him and never given him anything, so now he's reached up and he's grabbing it himself. We also then got our first words from Anthony Ogogo, which I obviously thought was really cool because he's from here in the UK and he's been training his ass off. He was all like, oh man, I'm gonna destroy everyone, and in the UK I'm a massive deal. And then Nick Comoroto just got some paint and he threw it over the Nightmare Factory sign as if to say, this ain't your Palace of Love anymore, Cody Rhodes, we take it over. I think they're also calling themselves The Factory, and I really like it. I mean, yes, it's very similar to the Nexus angle, but we all remember how the Nexus angle ended, and if we really do shine a spotlight onto all these new guys here and give them some serious wins, Well, I think that's gonna be ace. And like I say, it has just got me pumped to see what's round the corner. Sting interview was next, and you know how this goes. Tony Schiavone comes out full of glee like he's a child at Christmas, and then Sting arrives and makes Tony Schiavone even happier, and then you look at your watch and you time it until somebody interrupts. Recently it has been Lance Archer and Jake Roberts, so they appeared again here, with Archer saying he is sick and tired of being mucked around by AEW, and he's not gonna take it anymore. And somewhat surprisingly, Sting went, "You know what, Lance? You're correct. You are a monster, and you deserve more." He then pointed his finger at Jake Roberts and said, "Look, that's your job to ensure your client gets all this momentum and then never loses it." And I was like, what a nice piece of advice from a legend. I assume we're going to do this match too, and I am super excited about it, but I do have to admit that these segments have kind of just run into a wall. I love Sting. I mean, I absolutely love him, but it is just the same thing every single week, and eventually you do get to the law of diminishing returns, where, like I say, you could draw this out on a piece of paper and go, this is exactly what's gonna happen, and when it does happen, and you really don't take a huge step when it comes to the story, well, you kind of feel like you're standing still. So all of these bits just become kind of there, which should not be the case when you're talking about someone like Sting, who is a bona fide Hall of Famer. While I don't like doing this, they just need a little bit more pizzazz, and is getting it down. We then had another Team Taz video, which seemed really out of whack because we'd already seen Team Taz with Christian, but of course this was to remind you that Ricky Starks and Brian Cage really don't like each other. Taz is even more concerned about this now because he wants them to have a united front because their main goal at the moment is to recruit Christian. And Hook the whole time just stood there like, oh man, look, I look like Taz right now. Very excited to see what happens with Hook. The TNT title match was next as Darby Allin put his championship on the line against JD Drake, and this was just a great showcase of young talent. My favourite thing about it all is that Darby's dad is always watching out for him, because as soon as Ryan Nemeth even thought about interfering, Sting was here with his back to say, you better get off my lawn, and I love all of that. It ties into the past. They don't have to be physically together all the time, but you know the man has his back. Cesar Bozzoni was still on the outside, so Darby Allin did have to be wary of him, but there was this absolutely brilliant bit where JD was on the offensive, and he kind of did this cannonball into the ropes, which meant Darby Allin just fell on the floor, and then he gave him a Vader bomb, and my word, do I get excited about a Vader bomb, but very sadly it only got a 2. The story then became that Darby Allin kept trying to get to the top rope, but Drake kept cutting him off, so Darby went, well, I know how I can finish you off. I will give you a code red, a Canadian Destroyer from the top. And he did that, and the only thing that irked me is that he didn't go right for the 3. And it wasn't so bad, because all he did was go back to the top rope and then hit him with the coffin drop, which is his signature move. But honestly, this ticked all the boxes. Darby Allin is now 11-0 in his last 11 matches, which makes you go, wow, what a great champion he is. But also, JD Drake proved that he can go, and you should absolutely find a spot for him on the show. Of course, Allin does have a target on his back here, so as soon as this was done, out came House Hardy, and the Butcher and the Blade especially. I think they were going to take Darby Allin and just chuck him off the stage. As we know though, he does have his daddy looking out for him, so Sting was back along with the Dark Order to ensure that didn't happen. And yes, this was quite funny, because Sting at least 62 times could have hit the Blade with his bat but didn't, because that's not what it called for. And then the Butcher got caught up, so he was actually with the good guys and he just had to push past Sting and run down the bad guy entrance tunnel. Once again, I started to laugh. Tay Conti then used all this madness to attack the Bunny because of course they were going to have a singles match. But before we did get there, we had to see the demolition of one Christopher Jericho. For you see, Alex Marvez was in the back trying to catch a word with Chris, and again, he's good guy Jericho now, so he's like, oh Marvez, you look so handsome, but whatever. When the Pinnacle found him and just absolutely laid waste to his ass. That sounded worse than I meant it to. The rest of the Inner Circle couldn't help him because they'd been locked in their locker room, so the Pinnacle hit him with a spike trial driver, they choked him with a scarf, and they absolutely just kicked his ass to the point you're like, oh man, they're gonna throw him through a table. Just before that could happen though, Mike Tyson's music hit, and out came the former heavyweight champion of the world. And what I truly enjoy about Mike Tyson is that even though he's one man, 6 people then legged it, and because we know what Mike Tyson is capable of, you still go in 2021? Yeah, I probably would have legged it too. He then threw all of these punches into Shawn Spears, and I hope that Spears is alright because, Mike Tyson has been killing fools for the last 20 years. And then, if you can believe it, actually embrace Chris Jericho, as opposed to both join the inner circle, but also bury that hatchet. Now, I won't lie, this has already been spoiled for me when I did wake up this morning, because sometimes that's just how it goes with the world of social media. And when I did read it, I was like, man, that kind of sounds stupid. But when you watch it in practice, it is so over the top, and Mike Tyson is such an intimidating figure. Well, yes, I did have a good time. And do I need to see him in the inner circle long term? No, I do not, but he is going to be a special guest enforcer when these two teams do clash next week, and I think that's fine. It will probably generate some buzz, so we can have it up. Brent Baker then just cut the most hilarious promo. She was like in a parking lot or something, along with Tony Schiavone and Rebel, and just went, I don't care that I'm not at the top of the rankings. I don't care that I lost my last match. I want a title shot because I draw the most money and I sell the most merchandise. Britt Baker, ladies and gentlemen. So essentially, she's a draw and that's all that should matters. But as there are powers that be working against her, she's going to work her way back up to the top on Elevation and Dark and eventually become the women's champion. And when you think about it, that's exactly what should happen. We then moved into Tay Conti versus the Bunny, and they just had a really solid wrestling match. Obviously, Hardy's Clan and the Dark Order were at ringside and they kept getting involved, but it was the action in the ring that I enjoyed, and we really do have to ask the question, what the hell happened to Tay Conti when she was in NXT? Because now she's in AEW, and as I always say, just gets better week after week after week after week. She, of course, being a good guy, was beaten up for a while as the Bunny kept using this straitjacket submission to try and tap her out. And the best part was when Tay Conti hit that knee of hers and the Bunny was able to get out of it, and her face, she was so shocked and she was so confused. She looked a little bit like when Mike Tyson first came out. I should have mentioned this earlier. Anytime you first see Mike Tyson on a wrestling show, he always looks a bit confused, like, well, I don't really know where I am, and maybe I left the oven on. It led to a whole bunch of shenanigans with Shida, who was also at ringside wanting to watch this, because the Bunny stole her kendo stick, smacked Tay Conti in the head when the referee wasn't looking, and then she went to do it again, but Shida was on the ring. She grabbed it, refused Bunny to do this, which allowed Tay Conti to hit the Tay DDT, or the Conte, whatever the hell she's calling that DDT, and she got another win. And now there's no two ways about it. Eventually we are going to do Shida versus Tay Conti, and if you wanted to give Conte the title, I don't think that'd be the worst thing in the world. So this was good. I'm sure they're going to do it on a Dynamite soon, and I bet that will be pretty enjoyable too. All of this built to our Trio's main event, where Kenny Omega was going to team with the Good Brothers to take on the Young Bucks and Jon Moxley. And if you have been watching BTE, you know that Matt and Nick Jackson mentally have been through the gutter here, and my word, was all of that about to play out. Because Matt proved this instantly when he did face off with Kenny Omega, but he just couldn't go through with it. And he did tag out to Nick Jackson, who was more than happy to throw some fisticuffs, but even he, in his face, was very conflicted. The good guys still took out all of the good guys with a bunch of dives, because of course this is AEW. And then Matt Jackson was back in the ring and getting beaten up for a while, but he still made the hot tag for Jon Moxley. And there was no confliction with Mox. He wants to kill Kenny Omega, and he will do it however he possibly can. Everything from this point on enters I can't actually recount it for your territory, because it was just move, 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 go, 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 go. But that did end with Matt Jackson and Kenny Omega finally facing off. And although they wrestled for a bit, when Matt was able to super kick him, he changed his mind. He just couldn't do it. Instead, he slapped him round the face, which pissed both of them off and eventually led to Kenny hitting Matt Jackson with the V-trigger. But Moxley was having none of that, so he just got in the ring, he grabbed the AEW World Champion, and he gave him a pile driver. This is when he got even more crazy with a bunch of near falls, especially one after more bang for your buck. But when the Jacksons were going to go for the BTE trigger, once again, Matt Jackson looked at his brother and went, I just can't do it. Mox was then done with this, and I don't blame him, because he's like, man, we're wrestlers, what the hell is going on? So he hit Kenny Omega with 2 paradigm shifts, and then locked in the choke. And if you couldn't believe it, this is when it all fell apart, because the Young Bucks turned on their own partner. Eddie Kingston tried to arrive to help his friend, but he can barely walk at the moment, so he was no good. And back in the ring, the Good Brothers hit the Magic Killer onto Moxley, and then they grabbed Kenny Omega and just threw him on top, allowing him to get the kind of win. They set Moxley up for a couple of superplex afterwards, and now the Jacksons were more than happy to oblige. So Don Callis has officially got in their heads and manipulated these two as well. And I do admit it would have worked better if they weren't the tag team champions, because you can argue and go, look, you guys were on top of the world, why did you do this? But it is so much better than just having the goody two-shoes Young Bucks. This has got a bunch of story, a bunch of narrative, a bunch of depth you can swim through like Scrooge McDuck with all of his money. And I'm massively intrigued to see where they go with it. And that's what you want from wrestling, a good old tale. It also means that we can do the Young Bucks versus Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. And that's mostly why I'm more than fine with it, because I thought about it and I really do want that match. So all of this was more than fine, and while it was a slightly lackluster episode of Dynamite, we are still building to this huge card in a few weeks where, yes, we are going to get our first ever blood and guts match. And given how violent the unsanctioned matches have been, what the hell are they gonna do there? But overall, is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com where you can read yourself some wrestling articles, follow WhatCulture on social media, and as you are here on the channel, click another video flying around my head. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you very much for watching me as always, and yes, we will up those downs for Impact tomorrow, and then it's WrestleMania weekend, so strap yourself in and get ready for the ride.